So we'll get going. I'm just going to share a screen. You bear with me. So, as you can see on the screen, this is the RSFA DCMS Grassroots Facilities Investment Fund. DCMS, hopefully you can see, Department for Digital, Culture, Media and Sport. So this is a UK-wide funding opportunity that's been delivered across the 4 football associations. And the RSFA, of course, are delivering within Northern Ireland. Just a wee bit of housekeeping before we begin. Just to repeat, if you have a question to ask, you can use the chat function, or if it's quite a lengthy question and maybe more specific to your club, you may want to use the email address that's on the screen, dcmsfunding@rsfa.com. So you'll see this email address as we go through the presentation this evening. If you note that down, that's where to send all your queries on the programme. This is the agenda. It's quite a short agenda. Hopefully we'll have very useful, helpful information for your club. So we'll review the guidance notes. We're just going to walk you through the guidance notes and explain those to you. The guidance notes are available on the RSFA website, as is the application form. And again, we're going to walk you through the application form, which is on SurveyMonkey. There will be an opportunity for a Q&A at the end, where we'll watch for the questions coming in on the chat. And we'll also share some of the FAQs that have already been asked around the scheme. This is a £700,000 funding pot that's going to be delivered in a very short space of time, a very short window. There is potential for multi-year funding here in terms of this programme. The programme objectives, you can see them on screen. It's really around improving football facilities, particularly grassroots facilities. So this programme wants to improve capital infrastructure of grassroots football clubs across Northern Ireland. At the core, at the heart of this programme is the aim to increase participation in sport across Northern Ireland. Also to increase the number of multi-sports facilities in the country. So as we move through the guidance notes and the application, you will note that yes, we want to serve the needs of the football family, community in Northern Ireland, but if your club can help another local club, another sport, mention that in your application because it's one of the objectives of the programme. Also, the investment is to target disadvantaged or areas of deprivation. So an example of that may be putting your postcode into the NISRA website, and that will give you some deprivation figures for your area that you can use in the application as evidence. Another key objective of the programme is to improve access to sports facilities for women and girls, and also other underrepresented groups. So again, the key word that I would put above the objectives is participation. Increasing participation in football, increasing participation across other sports where appropriate. So I'm just going to stop sharing screen. We're going to look at the guidance notes. Give me 1 second. So hopefully you can see, Leanne, Anthony, can you read that okay? Yep. So this is the guidance notes, as I said, available on the RSFA website. We'll take a look at the website before we're finished this session. Contents page explaining what's within the guidance notes. We've got a background to the programme, and that outlines some of the objectives. And you can see those bullet points that we've just covered on the bottom half of that page. So on to the funding awards. As mentioned, £700,000 is available in the pot for small capital projects across Northern Ireland. The grant range is a minimum award of £15,000 up to a maximum award of £30,000. Eligible costs, we'll take a more detailed look at eligible costs, what types of projects will be funded within Annex 1, which is page 11 of these guidance notes. So we'll come back to that later. I just would say at this point, retrospective funding will not be awarded. So you don't be thinking before you get a letter of offer that you're going to go ahead because this is a cert and you're going to get the money and you go ahead and you do the work or purchase equipment. You cannot do that before you have the letter of offer. That's what's known as retrospective funding. So eligible costs include VAT. However, if your organisation is registered for VAT, VAT costs will not be eligible within the scheme. Another little point that might trip some clubs up is where your project requires professional input, incurring a cost of, say, an architect, for example, or QS. These costs will not be eligible within this programme. Partnership funding. There's not a requirement for partnership funding within the scheme. If your project costs £30,000, you will get 100% funding if your application is successful and scores strongly enough. I will say that whilst the threshold is 30,000, if the project costs 32,000, you'll need to demonstrate an evidence where you're getting the balance of that £2,000. So that might be a bank statement from your club to say, listen, we have this money in reserve, or you may have another funder that you might want to demonstrate this against, or it might be a loan. 100% funding is available, but you'll need to evidence the balance if it's more than £30,000. Most of you will have been aware of the Sport NI Building Better Sports Facilities funding that recently went out. An extremely competitive round. I've only heard of a couple of football clubs who have been funded through this scheme. However, if you're one of those clubs and you're in receipt of the Sport NI fund, you will have to provide confirmation of the total award you receive from Sport NI. As with most funders, duplicate funding is strictly forbidden. So do not be duplicating what you're asking for out of this fund against, say, a council fund. You cannot double fund, duplicate fund. Project state of readiness. For complex capital projects, you'll need to evidence the state of readiness. So what is a practical example of that? If you're going to do a project that requires planning permission, you will need to have planning permission obtained in place at the time of application. And you will need to upload the planning approval as evidence. So to be eligible for this scheme, your club needs to be affiliated to the RSFA, or you can be a grassroots football club that participates in a Northern Ireland Football League outside of NIFL. So NIFL clubs are not eligible for this scheme. It's a grassroots focused scheme, and we will be targeting intermediate clubs and junior football clubs across Northern Ireland. Another important point, your club must either own or operate its own football facility. So you will demonstrate that you own it with the title deed that you will upload in the application, which is an online application, or you will operate the facility via a lease, and that lease must have 10 years to run on it, to the 31st of March 2032. So for example, if your club has a lease, it might be 15 years, it might be 25 years, but we've only got maybe 5-6 years to run on the term of that lease. You will need to have that reviewed, and that will be quite tight. But the point being, you need to have a minimum of 10 years to roll on the lease up to the 31st of March 2032. We have a list within the guidance notes 3.1 showing you organisations who are ineligible to apply. So applicants will be required to submit supporting documentation along with the application form. So where you're asked within the online application that we're going to look at, you need to upload whether it might be a bank statement, it might be planning permission, it might be some cost to demonstrate you've got cost certainty around your project and you've got a state of readiness. Do not ignore these and think, oh, I'll not bother uploading these. You need to do that. And feedback so far that a lot of clubs who have applied already have not been doing this, so watch out for that. Just down to 4.4, all project claims must be submitted by the 30th of June. That's not doing your work in June, that's your claim to draw down the money and evidence your expenditure. Come back up to 4.3. This project, your project that you're going to apply for, must be initiated by the 10th of March. and you must be able to complete it by the 31st of March or as soon as possible after this date. Now that might sound a wee bit vague, but we're in a very tight window to deliver these schemes and to deliver this funding round. So be mindful of that when you're putting your application together, when you're planning your budget, when you're planning your scope of works. This must be completed in a very tight window. So ensure you have time to deliver the project that you're going to apply for. So the application process, again, some initial feedback. Clubs appear to be using the SurveyMonkey online application to do what I would call dummy or practice runs at the application. On the end of the assessors for the likes of Cooperation Ireland, that's going to clog up the system. So I would encourage you, Leanne has prepared a PDF version of the application that lists all of the questions. And just to maybe a little tip or hint, I would use the PDF that Leanne has supplied, but it's on the IFA website. We'll show you where it is in a second. And start to draft and prepare your written wordy answers on a Word document. So you can cut and paste them across so that when you're doing the SurveyMonkey online application, you can fill in the application in one setting, because the application will not, you cannot close your computer down, go away, it will not be saved. So trying to save you some time, also trying to ensure that the system doesn't become clogged up. We have a deadline, I haven't mentioned to date, but it's 5 p.m. on Wednesday, 26th of January. So what's that, 2 weeks? 2 weeks today. It's a 2-week window, quick turnaround, but it's the way it must be if we want to deliver this scheme. So when you're preparing your application, you must demonstrate within your application that the proposed project meets the objectives of the fund that we've covered at the very beginning of the session. Within section 3 of the application, this is what you would call or describe as the business case for the proposed project. There's an Annex 3 at the back of the guidance notes, I think page 13, and that will show you a scoring matrix in terms of how you should be aiming to complete your written answers, what I would call the wordy answers. A lot of the questions are capped at, say, 300 words. A tip again would be try to use as many words as possible within the cap, and try to put across SMART objectives or bullet points to put your points across to make the case for your funding investment for your club. We'll also look at the frequently asked questions log before we finish the session. So this is the, I'm going to try and zoom in on this bit. Let's see. Here we go. So this is the funding timeline. So we went live yesterday, 10th of January. The deadline for applications is 5 p.m. 26th of January. There's no point thinking, oh, I'll leave it the last minute and I'll get it in at 5:30 on the 26th. It will be ineligible. It must be submitted by the deadline. The assessment period will be across the end of January through the start of February, with decisions issued to applicant clubs by mid-end of February. Letters of offer to successful applicants will be issued end of February, start of March. In March, you will need to carry out a procurement process, so basically getting written quotations to demonstrate the value in the market for what you're asking to do. I'm going to go on. So 6.3, you'll be issued with the letter of offer. Most important, do not speculate or think, oh, we're going to get that and go ahead with the project. I've said this already, but wait for the letter of offer. And then you will sign a letter of acceptance, and that will go back in, and you'll be ready to roll with your project. Again, closing date, 26th of January, 2 weeks today, 5 p.m. Unsuccessful applications, there will be no appeals process. However, there will be the opportunity to receive a debrief or some feedback on your application. You can seek some feedback or a debrief with a formal request that should be sent to DCMS funding@risfa.com. So we talked about eligible project expenditure at the beginning, and I said we would come to it. This is Annex 1 on page, I think it's 11, yeah, page 11. And this is 2 columns. On the left-hand side, can be funded. So it lists down the types of project activity that can be funded. On the right-hand side, we have a list of items that cannot be funded. So we'll go into these because it's quite a broad scope, and being a football person, football volunteer, a lot of this would be great for a lot of clubs. So we've got football facilities, changing rooms, pitch upgrades, toilets, dugouts, spectator areas, including covered accommodation, hard standing areas around pitches, facilities for disabled users, and club rooms. Also, improvements and upgrades to heating systems, plumbing, power supply, ventilation, and insulation. Football goalposts, and these must have an economic lifespan of more than 1 year. Maintenance equipment, including bespoke football pitch grass cutting equipment and synthetic turf maintenance equipment. That might be something like a brush, so you can brush your 3G. Storage facilities, containers, but these must be installed within the football ground. Also, you've got access and egress projects, including improvements and upgrades to entrance, exits, car parks, pathways, fencing, and gates. So some of the stuff that cannot be funded. You've got salaries, professional fees, running costs such as electricity, gas, rates, rents, pitch hire, associated match costs, sports equipment such as balls, bibs, cones, hoops, lawnmowers, grass maintenance equipment designed for domestic purposes, improvement upgrades to bar areas or social clubs. This is a list of stuff that cannot be funded. IT equipment such as laptops and printers, tracking equipment, and other sporting equipment such as the tables, chairs, bar furniture. If you think about the stuff that can be funded, all of this is around participation, direct participation in sport. Moving on to page 12. Again, there's a Word document that you can download, Annex 2, from the RSFA website, and we'll take a look at that. And that's where you'll put in your costs. So if you'll describe your item. For example, if we go to category improvement works and upgrades to facilities, describe the item, the quantity, the net cost, the VAT amount, the total cost, the amount of funding that you're requesting, and if you need funding from other sources that you're going to allocate against that item. I will say there's been a few applications in today, and they haven't indicated how much they're asking for. So it's impossible for your application to be assessed if you don't provide costing and a financial request from this fund. And again, that's one of those supporting documents that you will upload at the appropriate place. Just going to maybe give a wee quick opportunity to Leanne and Anthony if I missed anything or passed over anything in the guidance.
No, I think everything's covered there, Richard. I see there's questions actually in the chat, but we'll maybe cover those at the end of the seminar if that's okay with everyone?
We'll do that in the final section.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. The final page in the guidance is basically Annex 3, which is a scoring matrix. So again, poor responses to the question. This will tell you what a poor response might look like to an excellent response. So these in column 3, you want to be ticking off all of those bullet points to obtain an excellent response to each question. So we're now going to look at the online application. So hopefully this works. SurveyMonkey can be a wee bit temperamental at times. Bear with me a second. This is where your Zoom menu doesn't disappear. Let's see now. How can I shift that? I'm going to improvise here. Bear with me. That's the one we're looking for. So hopefully on screen you can see ICFA DCMS Grassroots Facilities Investment Fund. Again, Anthony and Leanne, can you see the first page of the application? That's not actually the first page. I've selected the wrong one. That's a completely different fund that just disappeared. Oh, sorry, it is the application. But what we do, we need to go back. So this is the title page when you do the application. The link to the application form is on the ICFA website. So this is what you'll be greeted with, the title page. So next, you're into the first part of the application. And for clubs who are regularly doing funding applications, this is where we capture your contact details. Important to put accurate details in here. We don't want any email mistakes or telephone mistakes because this is a fast moving program and we need to be able to make contact with the club. It would be such a pity if you had a digit missing from your phone number or a letter missing from an email address and the letter of offer was being sent to the wrong to that and you weren't getting it. So any town united, and I've just filled in a dot address. You can see name, address, postcodes, email address, phone number. Football capital project. I'm sure all of you can come up with some more creative project titles. Question 4 is where you describe the project. So how are you going to improve your facility and what are the benefits going to be of the result of that work? You have to give the location, bearing in mind we're going to be using the deprivation measure. Make sure it's the correct postcode, particularly, and address for the club. Next section is the business case. And again, this is where we put the wordy answers. Ignore the things I've been putting in the boxes. That's just to allow me to go through the application. So the first question is set out the need for the project. So it might be that you want to improve the car park because you're operating at restricted capacity. It's maybe a health and safety issue. And if you can improve the capacity of the car park, you'll improve health and safety, allow more people to come on site, creating more sporting opportunities. So talk about the need, and you might have some reports or feasibility studies or technical reviews from construction experts that you might want to use or quote within that particular answer. Also, there might be a shortage of facilities in the area, and that might be in your local council sports facility strategy. You may want to quote that as well. So you're thinking about how can I set out why the project is needed, both in terms of for the club benefit, but thinking about the wider community and other clubs that might benefit. So when you set out the need, question 7 will ask you to address the needs and challenges and give a brief description of your vision and future plans. Okay, so there might be a sports development aspect to this, that you need to carry out a piece of work to ensure your ground meets joint ground criteria, intermediate joint ground criteria, for example. Question 8 is non-football sport. So if you can answer this to say, yes, we're going to meet the club needs, we're going to create more female opportunities within our club, football-wise, we're going to have an inclusion project in terms of disability, we're going to try and get the veterans over 35s back, so we're going to try and meet the main club teams' needs for training and matches. So that's fine, you've met the football needs, but what else? What other clubs can benefit from this project? So you'll describe that in question 8. Question 9, this is where you tell us about the people and communities that will benefit from any potential investment. Okay. Question 10, how this project will improve access to sport for women and girls and underrepresented groups. Okay, at the minute, your facilities may be at full capacity, and if you carry out this project, it will create further opportunities for participation, enhance the capacity of the club facility, and allow you to do more and be more inclusive as a club. Question 11. Given everything we've said so far, this is a very tight turnaround in terms of the application and a very short window to deliver the work. So this is where you need to nail it in question 11, that you're going to be able to deliver this project within the required time frame. Also, you may want to point to previous project experience. So you've delivered other small capital projects, if you've managed funding from other funders in the last few years, mention that in question 11. Project start date. So I've indicated here that we're going to start the 7th of March. I'm trying to marry with the timeline set out in the guidance notes, getting started before that 10th of March date. Question 13, I've said that we can deliver this by the 31st of March, 2022. Okay, so just be careful. Don't think, if it's a 12-week delivery period for your project, do not be thinking, well, I'm going to stick the 31st of March down anyway, because you're going to create a problem for your club. You're going to create a problem for Cooperation Ireland and RSFA, who are delivering this project. And we really are keen to see all of this money allocated and spent and invested in football and sport. State of readiness, question 14. So you maybe have a proposed schedule of works, and that'll list down week 1, we're going to do A, week 2, we're going to do B, week 3, we're going to do C. By the 31st of March, we're finished. Okay. Also, state of readiness might refer to planning permission. State of readiness might point to having went out to the market already to get some quotes to get value for money, but also to ensure that you've got affordability and a viable project. Also here, you might need to question 15, upload, for example, it might be quotes, it might be a copy of the planning permission. Do not ignore these where you have to upload a file, okay? Expected project funding. So the table you can see, that is in a Word document that you download. You complete the Word document and then go in here, replace file. I've uploaded a blank document just so I can proceed through the application. But you'll upload your budget Word document. Question 17, are you VAT registered? Yes or no answer. I find that majority of football clubs would usually be no, but you should know your own circumstances in terms of VAT registration. So here, the questions 18, they ask about other funds, match funding that you're going to put to your project. I've said nil. If there is no match funding detail, just put in nil, 0. Okay. And again, if there is match funding, you will want to evidence that. So it might be a cover letter from your club and a bank statement, and you'll upload those to say our club are going to commit £2,000 of the balance to this project. If it's another funder, again, you will want to upload the letter of offer or funding agreement from that other party. Question 20 asks you for the value of the grant you're looking to secure through this program. So do not leave that blank. Do not put in 0. Do not put in a figure below 15,000 because that will rule you ineligible for this scheme. 21 is asking around the Sport NI program, building better sports facilities. Again, if you've received a letter of funding, letter of offer for that scheme, you must confirm that yes or no, and then you will need to confirm the total amount you're getting from the Sport NI program in question 22 and upload a copy of the letter of offer in 23. That will apply to very few clubs, but if you are one of those very few clubs, it's important to declare it. So financial information, again, this asks you to put in your bank details, so the name of your bank, your bank account sort code, bank account number. Do not get these wrong. This is where we're going to send the money, hopefully, when you're successful. Also, do not ignore 25. You must upload a recent bank statement. A recent bank statement is within the last 3 months, okay? And that will confirm your bank details. There's a chance for us to make sure we've got the right bank details. But make sure you upload that supporting document. Security of tenure. So if you have a lease, sorry, I'll start off with if you own the club ground, you will upload the title deed to evidence that. So for capital projects, does your organization own or lease the building? It's yes, so it's one or the other. If your organization is not the owner, freeholder, please, well, this part is where you're putting in the 27 is where you upload the title deed, basically evidence that you own the property. Question 28 is if you don't own it outright, but you have a lease, it must have no less than 10 years to run. And again, you'll upload a copy of your lease in that section. Are there any restrictions or covenant on the land? So hopefully it's a not applicable or no. If it's a yes, well then you need to detail what the restrictions and covenant might be on that piece of land. So statutory approvals, if they're required, it's yes, go to 33 and detail what is required and if approval is currently in place. If you're waiting on a planning application decision, it's going to be very tight to receive that within the next 2 weeks. So hopefully you have it already in place. If you don't, you may want to hold back on this scheme. As we're saying, there's potential for further years of investment. If you have your statutory approvals, question 34, you will upload the evidence of that, the copy of the letter. And we're at the final section, which is the declaration. And this is just basically saying that you can confirm you've provided truthful and accurate information and that the primary contact has permission to apply on behalf of the club. So you tick the yes box and submit done. I'm not going to do that to clog up the system further. But what we are going to do now is take a wee look at some of these other links. How do I get this away? So, sure. Let me see now. Bear with me. No, we're back to that same problem again. So hopefully you're looking at the PDF, which is the application form questions. Can you see that? Yes. Yep. So this is Leanne has prepared this document for ease of access. You can see that using a SurveyMonkey, you don't want to be putting your wordy questions in and then losing them. So use this document, this PDF document that takes you through the different questions on the application and prepare your answers on maybe a Word document before uploading to the SurveyMonkey. So that's a very helpful, useful document, and that will walk you through the application. We'll come back to frequently asked questions in a second. So what we're looking at now is the page on the ISFA website. So I'm going to take you back. Are you looking at the ISFA website? Yes. So we'll take you back to the homepage. So that is us on the homepage, the ISFA website. You can see, scroll down, you can see the DCMS logo. You click on that, that takes you into a page which is all the information, including guidance notes, application form, some of the supporting documents such as the budget. So it details the program. Okay, we went through all of that already. So here we come down to the guidance notes. You click on that, that will take you to the guidance notes. There's a frequently asked questions log. that will, when people send in an email asking a question, we will update the log, and you can keep logging into that if you have a question. That would be your first protocol if you have a question after this seminar, or sorry, information session. Go on to the frequently asked questions. Has your question been asked? Can you find an answer? Is it clear? Do you understand? If not, that's when you need to send funding query or clarification to DCMS funding@icfa.com. Again, it's on the website. So applications opened yesterday and closed Wednesday, 26th of January. On the website is a link to the application. You can see here the Survey Monkey with the link to the application. Also, further down the page, you have the guidance notes that you can download. You've also got the FAQs that you can download, the PDF, the application form questions you can download, and we also have the Annex 2, which is the associated project costs. Now, hopefully I have a Word document already opened. So here we go. This is the Word document where you will put in your project budget details. So you select the appropriate relevant category. You'll give a description, short description of the work, a quantity if appropriate, net cost, VAT, total cost, so combining net and VAT, total cost, the amount of funding you're requesting from the IFA. If you've got a project and it's worth £35,000, you've got one item of work in here. You'll request your 30,000 against the ISFA, and you'll say that the funding 5,000 balance is being got from elsewhere. So you complete this document appropriate to your project, save it, and then when we think back to the application, when you come to the budget section, you will upload your budget, your Word document to that section. Again, I'll just give my colleagues, Anthony and Leanne, maybe an opportunity if there's anything that I haven't covered so far.
For myself, I feel you've done very well in explaining clearly the application form, the process, and the eligibility criteria. There are some queries and questions on the chat function, and we'll come back to them as soon as we're ready to do that.
I wonder, can we can actually allow people to talk, and I see that Joe Donnelly has his hand up. So just be mindful, if we allow you to talk here, this is being recorded. So Joe.
You hear me okay?
Yes, Joe.
How are you, Richard? Good to see you, buddy. Well, I put a wee query in just about, I'm working with Shorts Football Club, and as you know, I do a lot of work with the Irish Football Association around mental health and emotional wellbeing. And they have, within the confines of their ground, which they own, an old Bulls Pavilion, which they're now converting to a mental health and emotional wellbeing hub, which has rooms for educational learning and also fitness and health. And we're looking to basically apply for the Sport and I grant, which was put through as ineligible. And we're looking to see if we can get funds to improve the outside, because it's like falling apart, it's leaking, and the windows are falling out. And then it's basically the windows and the cladding. It's to make the place fit and add ventilation for COVID purposes, and just to basically make the place a secure venue where we can then develop the internal ourselves into a fitness suite, etc. We actually have got a small capital or small grant of clear projects. We've got some fitness equipment, we've got the space, and we're doing fitness programs in at the moment. We've got the educational suite internally, but the external is basically falling apart. So I don't know if that is, it's not clear within the, is it in yes or no? I couldn't tell by the look on the guidance if it falls under it.
Well, Joe, the most important thing is to remember participation is at the heart of this. So if your project work that you've just described, if you can link it to increasing participation in sport, potentially it could be funded. Also, in terms of the work you propose to do, if it can benefit other sports and allow other sports to have benefit, well, you would mention that in your application. Joe, it might be, I'm going to let Anthony come in, but it might be just drop us a quick email to dcmsfunding@isfa.com and we'll come back to you on that one.
I will, sir. I will.
Anthony.
Yeah. What I was going to say, Joe, was with all funds, it's really looking, as Richard says, at the objectives and seeing does it fit with the objectives, and then also ensuring the eligibility. The one, like, I mean, when I saw the question, there was a comment that it was for a bowling facility within the grounds. We would need to be sure that you actually have ownership or a lease on those, you know, that the bowling club, it may be sitting under a separate lease or a separate agreement, and that would need to be determined through the assessment process. So, and with a number of the questions that have been presented on the chat box, it really is look at the eligibility and look at the objectives of the fund. We can address that, but say we can go through these one by one in a short while.
Thank you.
I'm sorry, I just want to add, Richard's already mentioned it. It has to link as well, obviously, with the programme objectives and participation. Will it impact on participation? That's probably a question the club needs to ask itself before it submits an application. So just have a wee think about that before you submit something, Joe.
Thank you.
Do we want to go through some of the questions in the chat, Leanne?
Yeah, that'll be good. I'll maybe take, so Paul Gibbons had put in a question. You applied through the Sport and I funding and you're on the reserve list. Did you get correspondence, Paul? Sorry, can you come onto the call? Did you get correspondence from Sport and I saying that you're unsuccessful and you're put on the reserve list?
Going to allow Paul some permission. I suspect, Leanne, a lot of applications from sports clubs, and that includes football clubs, who scored a decent score in the Building Better Sports Facilities scheme. They all received a letter, nearly to a person, that they were on a reserve list. And that was really Sport and I's way to communicate that if more money became available, they would work their way down the reserve list. I'm trying to find Paul.
Just what I would say to Paul is there is a question within the application form. So we've asked you if you are successful in getting an award from Sport and I, you can upload the letter of offer. If you have that letter from Sport and I saying you're on reserve list, you could upload it there just to evidence that you haven't been in receipt of the funding you're on. And I suppose with the Sport and I money, that money, there may be a bit of time that you may still be on the reserve list. So this may, if you're eligible under this fund, you may get the funding quicker under our fund. And so that's what I would suggest doing there, is to upload any correspondence you have from Sport and I.
No problem. There wasn't an official letter. It was an email. I think everybody got an email. So I'll see how we can upload that email.
Yeah, if you could even do a screenshot and just something confirming from a Sport and I email address, that would be fine.
And yeah, and the second question, and then I'll leave you, is that Richard mentioned title deeds. Now, normally speaking, through the grant process, we have used an official letter from a solicitor confirming ownership. I assume that would be better than you having a whole bundle of title deeds.
Yeah, title deeds is something obviously that would tell us that you're confirming the club owns it. As well, yes, you can have a letter from the solicitor. What I would say to accompany the letter from the solicitor, if we could have a map just demarcating the area in which the club owns, it's just to correspond with the solicitor's letter, so like a folio map or something, just to confirm that the venue in question that you're applying for funding for correlates with the solicitor's letter.
That's okay, no problem. Thank you.
Thanks, Paul.
Thank you.
Okay, a copy of the recorded seminar. Yes, we're going to make that available. I think that was Angela. Leanne's answered that already. Thanks. Are there any of the questions in the chat, Leanne, that we haven't answered yet?
Yeah, I'll just go through. There's one from Roddy Boyd. It's by Annex 2. Yeah, what we sort of mentioned before, maybe in the application, is we're sort of recommending the clubs go out and get free quotations just to give them an idea as to the indicative costs of your project. Obviously, post letter of offer, you're going to have to go out and seek quotes again, because as Richard says, retrospectively, we can't award funding for anything pre-letter of offer, so you'd have to go out and get 3 quotes again when the letter of offer. But it's always a really good idea to seek quotes at this stage, because it gives clubs a really, really good idea of, you know, what it is actually going to cost, and if you need any other match funding, then, you know, you may need to secure other source of funding. So yeah, Annex 2, I would say, yeah, get a three quotes in order to get it accurately completed in advance of you submitting your application.
Another thing, Leanne, I would say, in terms of getting your 3 quotes, it's useful in that you're giving yourself a better chance to make sure your project is viable, that it's affordable to the club. The other thing is you might actually get some more competitive prices, allowing you to get more bang for your buck, getting more value for the grant. So that's the 2 ways I would come at the quotations. It can seem a hassle, but it can save you £1 or 2 and get a bit more work done.
There's a query about deprivation, about club being located in Lurgan, and your postcode comes up in deprived area, or doesn't come up in a deprived area. Unfortunately, this is something out of our control. This is a DCMS requirement, and deprivation is one of their key objectives across England, Scotland, Northern Ireland, and Wales. So we have no control over this. So unfortunately, the postcode is what it is. So, you know, you have to obviously put that in the application. You know, obviously scores, you know, postcodes that are in less deprived areas will score better, but that doesn't mean that you wouldn't be successful in this fund. You'll score obviously in other areas, including, you know, the need for the project in line with the project objectives, state of readiness, etc., etc. So don't let that put you off putting in an application.
Without getting too technical, on the NISRA website, your postcode goes in. There's different layers to look at the area geographically. There's what's called super output areas. Now, I'm not going to get into all of that, but use the statistics that are available to your best. And it might be that there's a proximity to services. So you might be a rural club, whilst it's an affluent area in terms of employment and income. It might not be, it might be on the most deprived end of the scale in terms of proximity to services. So that's something I would focus on in terms of looking at deprivation for a club that might be in an affluent area. There are ways and means to go about that in NISRA statistics. Sorry, Leanne.
Okay, no, thanks, Richard, for that. Brona has mentioned about academies that are linked to NIFL clubs. Brona, I would probably need more detail on that, just, you know, so we can have a look at your link to whatever the NIFL club is. What I would say is there needs to be sort of clear demarcation between you and that NIFL club, because as you can see in the eligible criteria, in NIFL clubs and associated entities in NIFL clubs are not eligible. So you probably need a wee bit more detail. Also, whether, you know, your club would be claiming youth development funds from UEFA, you know, linked to that said NIFL club. So there's a couple of things to consider there. If you want to email the DCMS funding, irishfa.com email address to get a wee bit more detail to us, we can look at that. But yeah, we just need to know what your link is basically to the NIFL club.
Also, it's important to remember when you're speaking about youth entities or associated entities that who has security of tenure, who has the responsibility for the property, for the ground. Is it the main senior club, or is it leased to the junior club? And from experience, just anecdotally, I suppose, it's usually the senior end of the club that takes responsibility, usually, for the grounds.
And Richard, that wouldn't be eligible then?
Because they wouldn't have ownership.
Yeah. So yeah, just probably a bit more detail, Brona, if you're unsure yourself. If you think that, you know, there is a definite link between the NIFL club, unfortunately it wouldn't be eligible for funding. Angela, sorry, maybe want you to sort of expand that, because this is a capital fund. So is it building works you're looking to do, or
Do we want to let Angela come in?
Yeah, please.
Explain, yeah. Angela Robb, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Hi, folks. Sorry about that. No, that question, I've actually another email on route to you, so just ignore that question.
Great.
No problem.
Thank you.
That's okay.
Sorry, thank you.
You're okay. I think we covered Paul's query earlier about the dates. Ryan's, I mentioned about the functionality application. Unfortunately, Ryan, you can't save this. It's that's detailed within the guidance notes. It's a SurveyMonkey application, but as Richard mentioned earlier, you can use the PDF documents available on our website. That gives you a list of questions that are on the SurveyMonkey, and then Richard made a very good point about creating a Word document and keeping that yourselves for future reference, and then just cutting and pasting the answers into the SurveyMonkey.
So there's a question from Julie. Is that the one we've answered?
No, that's a different one.
Okay, so our club have a NIFL team, but also 2 junior, senior teams and a grassroots team. Are we still eligible to apply? So it does say that entities of NIFL clubs are not. Also, just as we said, if those clubs, do they have ownership outright or a lease for that ground, that pitch, that building? That's an important question. Julie, send us in an email and we'll look at that if you need any clarification.
Emma, are you the same situation? If it's something that you need clarity on, again, we just need to look at the relationship between the club and the NIFL entity, just to make sure that they are separate.
Patrick raises a point in terms of members coming from deprived areas. So let's say your club is located postcode wise in an area that's seen as more affluent, but you would provide the narrative. If your members come and travel into the ground from an area, give some postcode examples and state that in your application.
There's a question from Sean. There's actually a similar query which is in the FAQ log, Sean, about the 10-year lease due to be agreed. Due to sort of fast turnaround of this program, we're allowing clubs a little bit of leeway in terms of they can submit the application with the lease pending, but by the time the assessment's carried out, if the lease is not in place, you will be ineligible for funding. If you want to go on to the guidelines document, I'll give you, Richard showed you earlier, it was a timeline for the assessment period. So we're probably looking at sort of end of January, start of February. So if the lease is not in place, not confirmed by the council by that date, and you're going under assessment, it would be ineligible. So that's what I would say on that point. Yeah, that's it. So you'll see the application. These are indicative dates, by the way, but we just wanted to give applicants a sort of a rough outline of when we felt that these sort of stages of the application process would be carried out. So you can see the application assessment period end of January, start of February. So by that period, your lease would need to be confirmed by the relevant council.
Let me see, are we getting through these questions or is it? I think we are. Can the application include more than one item of equipment? Yes, as long as the lifespan of that piece of equipment is more than one economic year.
Yeah, and it's obviously the total of the project has to be a minimum of 15,000 as well. So Brona, you said items like portable lights for training. Yeah, that's one I'm not sure about, because Anthony, do you want to maybe have you a view on that? Because it should really, when we're looking at these, it's something that it's bespoke and fixed usually and would be eligible.
And I would have take a similar view. It's for improvement of these facilities. If you were hiring facilities from a council or for a school, I mean, that's really to aid their facilities. This is for the facilities owned by the local clubs, by the grassroots clubs. And that's what we're really trying to assist and help and develop here. Yeah,
the problem with portable lights as well, the worry is they could just go off site and you never see them again, and that's not sustainable. This is a program that we want to fund sustainable pieces of equipment which can be used, as Anthony said, at a home ground. So I'm not sure in that one, Brona. I don't think that would be eligible.
And the question about the tech items is the same. That's actually addressed within the eligibility. It says IT equipment, tracking equipment would be ineligible. So for both those questions, I think the answer would be negative.
Yeah, the key is bespoke, because what we've said in the eligible items is like cutting equipment, bespoke, grass, pitch equipment. That is, dedicated to encouraging, participation in pitches, because you're able to, turn around a pitch quicker, etc. That's how you demonstrate that something like that, and will add and increase participation. This, I don't know how you would do that, to be honest with you. Linking in with the project objectives or program objectives. Sorry.
Emma Shaw has her hand up, so Emma will bring you in.
Thank you. It's just a quick question in terms of those of us with Belfast City Council contracts. They typically are 5 to 7 years. They don't go 10 years, but we've had ours continuously renewed, and we've been on the same ground since 1929. So if we were to have a council letter or a solicitor's letter clarifying that, would that be acceptable as security of tenancy?
I think, Emma, that needs some consideration on our part. So I'm going to ask you to stick that in the email. Sorry that we can't answer that right now.
No worries. Thanks.
I think, Emma, it does detail within the guidance notes that you have to be able to demonstrate that you have it the 31st of March 2032. If you can get that right from the council, that makes it easier, but it's in the document, Emma, so I don't know whether we can deviate from that, to be honest with you, but you can send it in to the DCMS funding email.
Question in the Q&A section from Nigel. He's asked, can you apply for both funds, Sport NI and the RSFA DCMS funding? Well, the answer is yes. However, if you receive Sport NI funding and you apply to the RSFA DCMS program, you will need to clearly designate that this is for a different project. That's for different expenditure. You cannot be duplicating the same expenditure Sport NI against this. But there's a section within the application where you can upload your letter of offer from Sport NI to show this is what they're going to cover, and then within the rest of the application to RSFA DCMS, you will demonstrate that there's different area of work to be covered. Hopefully that's answered your question, Nigel. Brona, who wanna, let me see. Hi, Brona, you want to ask your question?
Apologies, I actually didn't realise that I had my hand raised.
Okay.
Sorry, I think I've taken up enough of your time. Apologies.
No, fine, Brona, no problem. Okay, thank you. Right, we're getting probably to the point of Zoom fatigue here. We've been going an hour, well, we've been going an hour, yes. Let me see, I'm just going to go into the FAQs. Again, a reminder, you can download FAQs on the RSFA website that we've looked at under the section relevant to this fund, and we'll continue to update that when we get asked a question with a response. So closing date, 26th of January. Do you need to complete all sections of the application? Some of the applications received so far have just missed out questions. So unless it's not applicable in any way, you need to answer all of the questions. Okay. Leanne, do you want to add anything to that? In terms of answering all sections?
I would just say, based on what I've just seen to date that's been submitted, use the guidance notes that are there to assist clubs. We suppose we've mentioned it several times, and just relate back to the program objectives when you're demonstrating needs, and you're obviously hitting all the program objectives as well. Missing questions, yeah, there's a lot of clubs missing questions, important questions, and then the one question as well at the end, the declaration that needs to be ticked, and that's being missed out by clubs, and you need to declare that everything that you're submitting is true and correct. So And as well, Richard's mentioned earlier about uploading supporting documents. They become very important in the assessment process, and Anthony will agree that he needs all that information for his team to be able to assess your application fairly, and also, you know, just do yourselves, you know, justice in terms of getting all the information to us. The more information you give us, the better you're going to score.
Okay, so we've went through the guidance notes. We've looked at the application, which is, again, it's an online application. The link is on the RSFA website. And some summary points just to conclude. The minimum award is 15,000. The maximum award is 30,000. Partnership funding is not required. You can have partnership funding, but you'll need to evidence that within the application. This fund is for clubs who operate their own facilities, so they might own those facilities, or you'll evidence that through a lease with a minimum of 10 years security of tenure. The application, it's now open. It's an online application. You must submit through the online link. And as Leanne says, fill in all of the sections. And when you come to section 9, tick yes and hit submit. Also, there's more information. I'm just going to take us to there's more information on the website. There's the link, okay, to the fund. And if you have any more questions, if you have any queries or need clarification, the email address is on the bottom of the screen, dcmsfunding@isfa.com. If you drop your email into that, we'll get you a response, and then we'll share that with everyone else, if we can, on the FAQs.
Richard, there's a couple more questions in the chat there, just
Okay.
to answer them.
Yep.
Ryan, you're asking about the SurveyMonkey questions. They're not visible. No, they're not, but Richard had directed you to the website. There's a Word document. Richard, would you maybe bring that up again just to show people where that is on the website in terms of the questions?
So this is me back to my gremlin here. It's a website.
No pressure.
It's the way this system works. So this should be the website. Yes.
Yeah, that's it.
Okay. So this is the page. We'll take you right to the start, the home page. That's the home page, isfa.com, and you'll scroll down it and you'll see just here to the right, the link. Click that link. That will take you into the page that has all the information about this fund. So it gives you an overview of the fund, grant ranges, objectives, and it comes down to guidance notes. FAQs are in that particular link. That email address we've mentioned many times. The SurveyMonkey link is down near the bottom here. As you can see, SurveyMonkey, that's the link you click, and that will take you into the application. There's also the PDF, which is down near the bottom here. This is the application form questions. You can download them through that particular link. So if I click that, hopefully, is that taking us to it? Yeah.
Yeah.
So this is a bit of guidance around the application, and then we get down a wee bit, and this is where we have the questions beginning that will reflect what's on the online application. So I would even lift that onto a Word document and start putting the answers in below each question. And I would save that Word document as a master copy that your club can work on and refine and improve and review, and also keep then as a record of submission, because SurveyMonkey, of course, doesn't give you a copy of the application. So I would highly recommend you use a Word document to prepare your application, save that for future reference, and before you save it for future reference, cut and paste the questions across onto the SurveyMonkey. What other questions, Leanne?
So yeah, just we had just a couple of messages from Craig and Nigel about the webinar. Yeah, Thomas is going to share that, I think, with everyone who's attended tonight.
Yep.
And also I'll get that posted once it's available, put on the DCMS dedicated page then, so everyone can watch that too.
And one comment I would like to add about the application form, and it reminded me there when Richard pulled it up. Within the application form, it asks for information to be presented in a smart format. So if I go back to Richard's example when he talked about a car park, and applications, you may say we want to build a car park beside the facility. What we need to know is, how big is the car park? How many square meters? How many cars or vehicles are you looking to provide for? When will this work be done? When will it be completed by? If you're talking about increasing participation for women and girls or other minority groups, how many women, how many girls, how many teams, what number of participants are you looking to increase overall? Have you set yourself target dates for this participation? Do you look to achieve that within 6 months, within 1 year? But actually to provide us more detail rather than a very simple brief statement that just says we want to increase participation of females in sport. Many applicants will say that there. So what we want you to do in your application is to differentiate yourselves from other submissions and to actually give us a level of information that's required for assessment. And in the guidance note, it does actually give some detail on how the responses to the questions will be assessed and the types of factors that we will be looking for throughout the assessment process. Have you provided evidence of need? Have you provided smart responses to those key questions? Does it relate to other strategic plans such as Sport NI, etc.? And have you got the capacity to deliver on the project that you're proposing? And the more detail you provide, the better your answer, the higher the score that will be awarded. And this will be a competitive fund. We can see the number of people that joined the webinar this evening. So the more information you provide, the better your chances of being awarded a higher score. No guarantee of fund with anything, but really give yourself the best chance possible by providing the most information you can to the assessors. You're on mute, Richard.
All right, I just said excellent advice, Anthony. Thank you. I think we'll bring this to a close because, yeah, we've been going an hour and 10 minutes. Numbers have held up well. A few dropped off. I don't blame them, but hopefully this has proved helpful and useful for clubs who are considering an application to the fund. We wish you well with that particular fund. For any Tottenham and Chelsea supporters, it's Tottenham 0, Chelsea 1. So I'm doing with Chris Kamara. So listen, Leanne, Anthony, thank you very much for supporting the call. Thanks to Thomas for IT support as well. And thank you all for tuning in tonight. And use that email address if you have any queries or clarifications. And good luck with your application. Thank you.
Goodbye. Good luck.